The Clerk.
Private Members Business Notice Number 2, Fair Work Amendment, Tackling Job Insecurity Bill 2012.
The member for Melbourne.
Mr Acting Speaker, I present the Fair Work Amendment Tackling Job Insecurity Bill 2012 and the explanatory memorandum. As we head towards the Christmas break, most of us are looking forward to a couple of weeks off to relax and perhaps to indulge and wind down. But for many Australians, it can be a time of great stress as they go without paid leave, and they go, for many of them, wondering whether or not their contract is going to be renewed next year. We are now in a position where 1 in 4 employees in this country does not enjoy paid leave. Now, that is a national shame, and it is something that we need to tackle because it is having an effect on the ability of millions of people around this country to plan their lives and to take the kind of steps necessary that the rest of us take for granted to live a secure and planned life. This bill will mean millions of Australians trapped in insecure work will have a pathway to secure employment. It will mean a mother who needs to look after a sick child will have a right to take personal leave. Or a contract teacher who works year after year to teach our children will finally be able to apply for a mortgage. Or a temporary worker who's stuck in an endless cycle of labour hire will have an opportunity for more certainty. Mr Acting Speaker, a central premise of almost all the deliberations in this chamber is that we must work towards a strong economy. I agree, and the Greens agree. However, there's another underlying premise that if we take all the steps necessary to serve the economy, then it will automatically serve us. But I don't agree that this will always happen. As our Greens leader Christine Milne said at the National Press Club in September, we want an economy that serves the people, not the other way around. We must remember that the economy is a tool that we invented. If the economy is not delivering the outcomes we want, making us happy, safe, healthy, better educated and fulfilled, then it's time that our economic tools changed. And there's been a growing trend towards insecure work in Australia, where a staggering number of casuals and people on rolling contracts now make up our workforce. Around 2.2 million employees are not entitled to paid holiday or sick leave and have no guarantee of ongoing secure employment. And we are often told that this is because business needs flexibility. But, Mr Acting Speaker, I believe that this trend is symptomatic of what can start to happen if we let markets become our masters and when financial risk in an increasingly uncertain world is transferred away from companies and on to workers, because that is what has happened in Australia over the last couple of decades. The growth of the casual workforce from around 15% in the 1980s to around a quarter of all employees now is part of the phenomenon that was articulated in the 2010 report Shifting Risk, Work and Working Life in Australia, produced by the Workplace Research Centre. They observed that people are now required to absorb more and more financial, social and economic risks and therefore experience much more financial and social stress. And the landmark inquiry report from a previous Deputy Prime Minister, Brian Howe, Lives on Hold, that was released by the ACTU in May of this year, builds on this and gave voice to many of those who are trapped in a cycle of insecure work, which often robs them of the ability to make long-term decisions and plans about their lives. I do acknowledge that there's a place for casual labour in the workforce. It can be used to address genuine business needs, and it can be beneficial for people who only want short-term employment with higher rates to compensate for the lack of tenure. It can be a win-win arrangement. But it's not always the case. And in 2007, over half of all casual employees reported they would prefer not to work on a casual basis. Most of these would prefer to have both paid holiday leave and sick leave, even taking into account the effect that this might have on their income. And over half of all casuals have been employed in their current job for over a year, and over 15% of casuals have been in their job for more than 5 years. And as I said earlier, many people at this time of the year face the prospect of the holiday season without paid holidays. Those of us in secure employment as we look forward to a relaxing break to recharge and perhaps even overindulge, should remember that this is not a luxury shared by all. And in addition to casuals, there is also a significant number of people on fixed-term contracts and rolling fixed-term contracts. In 2011, there were almost 400,000 people, just over 4% of all employees, engaged in this form of insecure work. But it's worth noting that these arrangements are heavily concentrated in education, with 15% of the workforce on fixed-term contracts. This means that education alone accounts for a third, almost, of all employees on fixed-term contracts in Australia. These are the people who are teaching our kids and who are bringing up the rest of us through secondary school and through universities, and over a third of all employees on fixed-term contracts are found in education. Numerous teachers will be finishing their contracts in the next few weeks with no guarantee of what the future might hold. What should become a time of rest will become a time of stress. Many of these teachers may well commence new contracts when school starts next year, but surely if a contract is regularly renewed, shouldn't it be ongoing, Mr Acting Speaker? If a strong economy doesn't deliver secure jobs, then is it really serving the people? If some people can only find insecure work, then we risk creating a new underclass of people who may never qualify for a mortgage, may never be able to choose to start a family. Surely, as a society, we should aspire to provide secure jobs for everyone who wants them. The Greens believe that tackling job insecurity is a public good, and this bill addresses this issue. This bill amends the Fair Work Act to provide a process for workers employed on an insecure basis to be moved to ongoing employment on a part-time or full-time basis. The right of small businesses to use genuine casual employees will be preserved, with such employees excluded from the operation of the bill. This exemption for small businesses is consistent with the existing objects of the Fair Work Act. Two general classes of workers are eligible to request secure employment arrangements from their employees. These are casual employees and rolling contract employees. The bill defines rolling contract employees as someone who has been employed on a fixed-term contract by the same employer doing the same type of work on more than two or more occasions. An eligible employee or their union must make a request for secure employment arrangement with their employer in writing. The employer must give the employee or their union a written response to the request within 21 days. If the employer refuses the request, the written response must include the reasons for the refusal. If a request is refused, then an application can be made to Fair Work Australia for a secure employment order. In deciding whether to make a secure employment order, Fair Work Australia must have regard to a number of factors, including the needs of employees to have secure jobs and stable employment, and an employer's capacity to use arrangements that are not secure employment arrangements in cases where this is genuinely appropriate, having regards to the needs of the business. A secure employment order may apply to one or more persons or class of persons and may be implemented in stages as Fair Work Australia thinks appropriate. Unions may also apply directly to Fair Work Australia, as may employer associations, for secure employment orders on behalf of classes of eligible persons, such as a particular industry, kind of work, type of employment or employer. Small business casuals will be exempt from any such orders of general application. The bill does not seek to ban casual labour or fixed-term contracts. These are valid industrial instruments that will be available when genuinely needed. The bill does not remove management prerogative to make business decisions about using insecure employment arrangements, but makes sure they are used legitimately and reasonably, and leaves open the right of Fair Work Australia to determine that there are circumstances in which an employer may not have an appropriate right to use, say, labour hire or other forms of arrangements. Good, successful businesses have nothing to fear from this bill. Good businesses know that long-term investment in their workers is a good investment. Good, successful businesses know that secure workers are more productive workers and that productivity can grow if we invest in our workforce. And good, successful businesses know that the growing casualisation of our workforce is unsustainable. The trend towards insecure work is by no means inevitable. Many other OECD economies have experienced similar structural economic changes and dynamics to Australia, but do not have the same levels of insecure work. As Acting Speaker, only Spain has a higher rate of insecure work than Australia, but they have 1 in 3 workers in temporary employment because of a large seasonal rural workforce. The Greens and the ILO believe that the casualisation of the workforce can have widespread damaging impacts on society, leaving workers and communities in unstable and insecure situations, disrupting their life planning options. If we can provide secure jobs, then we should provide secure jobs.
The Clerk.
First reading, a bill for an Act to amend the Fair Work Act 2009 and for related purposes.
In accordance with Standing Order 41, the second reading will be made in order of the day for the next sitting.